You mind if I record it?
Oh, no, no.
Okay.
Of course not.
Oh, I guess we're gonna start real basic. When and where were you born?
In Poplarville, here in Pearl River County, on May the 19th, 1934.
Here in Poplarville.
Mm-hmm.
Poplarville, Mississippi. Real big town.
It's a big one. I've got to admit my notoriety does exceed the confines of Poplarville, though. Hopefully.
Yeah, I believe so. What was your childhood like growing up in Poplarville,
Oh,
Mississippi?
it was just a small town, good. Everybody always says about a small town, there's nothing to do here, but we stayed busy the whole time. I guess we didn't know any better.
Really?
Just, it was a good life.
How many brothers and sisters?
I have a sister who's 3.5 years older. And, actually, she went off to college when she was like 15 and a half and went to the W. And so she was gone most of the time when I really knew better.
Mm-hmm.
She took advantage of me when I was young. It was always, son, go do this, son, go do that. And I'd run, do her errands for her. We had a good relationship.
What about your parents? Real close with your parents?
Real fine. My father had a dry goods store that was a block and a half from our home. My mother taught fourth grade in my early years. In fact, she taught me. The school where she taught was a half a block from our home. Mm-hmm. We're Methodist, and the Methodist church is a half a block from our house. The grocery store where we shopped was a block away, so it was a real quiet, simple life. In fact, we didn't even have a car until after I got out of law school. Yeah, it was fine.
That must have been great.
It was. I talked about my mother taught school. I think it was the first year that I was here at the PRC in my junior year of high school. I believe that was the year my mother took over as manager of the bookstore, and she was manager of the bookstore and student center for years and years and years out here. But
what kind of hobbies did you like and did you have coming up?
I guess probably the basic thing that you would call a hobby is hunting. Mm-hmm. Squirrel hunting. I'd get up before daylight and before school, and our house here in Poplarville was just right almost at the railroad track. The railroad track runs right through Poplarville, and I'd get up before daylight and go south on the railroad track to 2 or 3 branches down there, squirrel hunt when the sun came up, and get back and still go to school. It just, I guess that was the nearest thing I had to a hobby though.
Did you like deer hunt or duck hunt?
We didn't do that back then.
Really? Just a lot of squirrels.
A lot of squirrels, and I was just a kid,
Yeah.
Went by myself, so. No, we really didn't have deer in this area or turkey either like we do now.
Really?
Mr. Rand Batson owned many acres between Poplarville and Lumberton, and he had a game preserve up there, and it was fenced in with, gosh, a 10 or 12 foot fence all the way around it. He even had a Mr. Malley who was his game rider. He rode those fences all the time and kept people out of it. But you could drive up Highway 11 going north, and it paralleled Mr. Batson's land,
right.
And oftentimes you could see deer up there, and that always excited us.
I'll bet.
Now deer are all over the country, and we're all of us into some form of deer hunting usually.
Right. Did you come up playing any sports or anything?
I played in the band.
Did you?
I played trombone. I started out playing saxophone, and I didn't think that was very macho, so I changed to trombone.
I didn't make it very long, but I started in the trombone.
Did you really?
4th grade.
Well,
Didn't stay very long, but I started in the trombone.
Now, I took piano for 4 years when I was just a kid, but I have not pursued that. But I did start playing trombone, and in fact, I played trombone the 2 years in high school. The 2 years of high school were out here on campus, and then 2 years of college, so I played in the band 4 years here. Then went to Ole Miss in my junior year and played in the band up there, and then I went into law school for the 3 years and no longer pursued it.
Did you find the band help you to I don't know, being in a group? Did it help you to be better with people?
The most exciting thing about playing in the band and playing trombone was in the marching band, I marched on the front rank right behind the majorettes. And that was true even at Ole Miss. The only problem I noted that particularly at Ole Miss is all of the majorettes married football players and not band players.
Well,
I had a band scholarship out here, and in addition to my tuition or whatever, they paid $27.50 a month. And so I lived in the dormitory my sophomore year, and that paid my room and board. And my milk bill at home, had I been living there, would run that much.
Really?
So it was a real good deal.
What was Pearl River like? You were here in 1952 and 1954, right?
We had 328 students total on campus. Of course, everyone knew everyone, and I'm sure they do now, but not quite to the extent. And I've got to say, having 2 years of high school, along with 2 years of college, when you were a senior in high school, it didn't mean that much. You were still the underdog because you had the 2 years of college that were older than you, but it was a real pleasant experience.
What about being the student body president?
Well, my freshman year, I ran for vice president of the student body and was elected. I ran on the ticket. The person that I ran against was a sophomore, and of course the president of the student body was always a sophomore. So my attack was, and I worked the freshman dormitories, we need a freshman to hold that office because the sophomores had the other, and it worked. It was effective. And then the next year I ran for student body president and was elected, and I really enjoyed it. Garvin Johnston came as president of Pearl River my sophomore year, and that was the year that I was president of the student body. And we had compulsory attendance for over in Moody Hall for assembly every Wednesday at 10 o'clock. And we had done that all these years when Mr. McClendon was here, and then when Garvin Johnston came, he continued it, but he changed it to the extent he put the student body or the student council in charge of the assembly program. So I had to preside over that assembly, and I've got to admit, every Wednesday morning starting about 9 o'clock, I lived in Huff Hall in the southeast corner room on 3rd floor. About 9 o'clock starting on Wednesday morning, I'd get up there and start gagging. I'd be nervous and upset and just anticipating having to conduct that assembly. And more particularly because there was a fellow by the name of Rene Gonzalez, who's, I think he's now in Columbia, but he would every Wednesday do something to give me a hard time. I'm out of jest, you know, but that was a real interesting experience.
Was that the first time you had to get up and talk in front of a lot of people, or?
Well, probably, to that extent at any rate. And you know, looking back, of course, it wasn't any big deal, but at that time it was to me.
Oh, sure it was. Did a lot of kids stay on campus then, or?
Of course, the dormitories were full, but there were a lot of all the high school students commuted. And a good many of the, particularly the local students from the Poplarville area commuted. Kids didn't have vehicles, so those that lived away from here generally stayed on the campus. There was a time in later years, well, a long time after I was gone, that the college ran commuter buses all over the district, and that enabled students to stay at home and commute every day, but during those years that was not the case.
Right.
Incidentally, talking about students not having cars, with the 328 students who were in either high school or college here, and this was the only campus, we didn't have the campuses away from here like we do now, there were 3 cars owned by students. One was owned by, and it was a great big Cadillac owned by Hoyt Bass, whose father owned Bass pecan nurseries in Lumberton, and of course the family was very well to do. There was a young man, and I can almost call his name, I say a young man, he had worked offshore as a helicopter pilot with the oil industry and was back in school, and he had a baby blue Buick convertible. Of course he could afford that vehicle. And then the 3rd car was Bob Hewitt from New Orleans. He married Catherine Leggett Barbara Leggett from here in later years. But he had a Chevrolet 2-seater with the, we call it the turtle hull, the trunk on the back that lifted up. And he had rebuilt that car, so those were the 3 vehicles on campus. Incidentally, we, at that time, in those years, and did for a long time after, had parades for homecoming. And I think it was one of the dorms that was either freshman or sophomore had a entry in the parade, and it was that Chevrolet with the turtle hull raised up, and Rene Gonzalez, we put a commode in the back of it, and Rene Gonzalez was sitting on the commode like the thinker. But those were enjoyable days.
I bet they were carefree.
That kind of stuff still goes on campus, I'm sure. I'm sure you've been a part of it, in fact.
Some things. What do you know about the change of the school paper from the Cadet to the Dixie Draw?
My recollection is at that time, when I was involved with the student council, we had a contest to determine a new name for the college paper. At that time it was called the Cadet. And where that came from was, for years there was an ROTC unit here on campus. In fact, even in my youth, younger years, I can remember once a week, it may have been once a month, but at any rate, on a regular interval, the ROTC participants paraded from campus all the way down Main Street and back to the campus in their uniforms and all. And so the paper was called the Cadet in recognition of them being cadets in the ROTC program. And I can't even remember what ROTC stands for. Training Corps, officers.
Reserve Officers.
Reserve Officers Training Corps is what it was. But at any rate, we no longer had it. And it was decided we needed to pick out a name that's more indicative of campus life. And I don't remember what the various entries were, but I think for Wildcats, somebody had submitted the Cat's Lyre, L-I-E-R, I guess it is. But the name that was selected by election on the campus was the Dixie Drawl. And here we were in the South, in Dixie, and we all talked with a drawl, except those that come over here from Louisiana. But at any rate, that
My
name,
aunts and uncles.
yeah, that name seemed to appeal to a majority, and that's when we changed the name to Dixie Drawl. Incidentally, the Student Center, I don't remember what we named it, and it may have ended up being designated not by election but by the administration as a Student Center, rather than the name that, as I recall, got the most votes, and that was the Cat House.
Wow.
And I'm inclined to think that the administration dubbed the name the Student Center in lieu of that which was voted on.
All right. How'd you like Ole Miss?
I enjoyed it. I say we, my longtime law partner over the years, David Smith, we came up through kindergarten all the way through grammar school, through Pearl River out here. We left here and went to Ole Miss. We roomed together up there in a freshman dormitory, and we were juniors. But at any rate, we did our junior year there, and at that time you could go into law school. Law school is a 3-year course, and your freshman year in law school, particularly if you were a liberal arts major, could count as your senior year toward your BA degree. And so that's what we did after the junior year. We went into law school, and so we were at Ole Miss 4 years. But we were the first Poplarville, Pearl River Countyans that had gone to Ole Miss in years and years and years, and we really thought we were something. In fact, David and I led the Ole Miss band, a pep rally. We led a pep rally into the Peabody lobby right in front of the cheerleaders. We were really into it. I remember we took 2 years of French here on campus from Miss Fournay, and she gave us a good background, but we had to have 3 years of foreign language and pre-law. And we determined when we got to Ole Miss we weren't about to take that 3rd year up there, so we took Latin instead. And I can't say anything in Latin, And the only thing that I can say in French is "Garçon l'addition, s'il vous plaît," and who wants to ask the waiter for the check, you know? and nothing useful came out of it, I don't think, but no, Ole Miss was a grand experience. We left here on the Greyhound bus, went to Hattiesburg, transferred, this was on a Sunday night, transferred to the Trailway bus and went to Jackson, transferred to another Trailway bus and went to, like, I think it was Winona or Grenada, and then transferred to another bus that took us into Oxford, downtown, on Monday morning before daylight, and we walked all the way out to the campus carrying our 2 bags of everything we owned, and that was the first time either of us had ever even seen the campus of Ole Miss. But that doesn't have any relation to Pearl River other than maybe our experience here at Pearl River giving us stamina, you know.
Right. Well, how often did y'all get to go home?
We came home on Thanksgiving and on Christmas and on Easter, and then when school was out. But those were the only times and we hitchhiked home. But in those days, you could take your suitcase and get a great big sticky banner that had the big M on it for Ole Miss, put it on the side of your suitcase, got out on the side of the road, and within 5 minutes you had a ride. Mm-hmm. And you'd go as far as that car would go, and out, and again, it was just, you know, people would just give students a ride like you wouldn't believe. We'd never think of doing that. You don't even know who might or may not be a student nowadays. So,
I bet y'all were the big men in Poplarville then. Coming from Ole Miss.
I wasn't carrying this much weight then, so from that standpoint, I wasn't as big as I am now.
Did you know, coming up as a young boy, you'd want to study law?
My grandfather was a lawyer. He practiced in Purvis for years and years. He was, and I'd go to his office and look at the books and wish that I wanted to be a lawyer, but I just didn't have any inclination in that direction. I came up thinking maybe I wanted to be an FBI agent, and then the year that David Smith, my law partner, and I had graduated from high school, we were sitting on Mother and Dad's front porch looking at the college catalog from here at Pearl River. There's no question but what we were coming to Pearl River, and looked under pre-law, and it did not require any math. And that cinched it right then. I had for years said I wish I wanted to be a lawyer, but then when I saw I didn't have to have any math and I could get into pre-law at least to start. And David had taken trig or some math course in high school, and he decided he didn't want him. He thought he was going to go into engineering school, and so that decided him too. But
that's
I have absolutely no regrets for having done it. It's been a good life. I'm semi-retired now. City attorney here in Poplarville, like I've done for almost 30 years. Attorney for the college, like I've done for about 30 years. And those are my 2 clients. I tell people what I used to do when I was actively engaged in the practice full time. A project for the college that I would take 15 minutes and get accomplished, I'll do it in 3 hours, you know, but it's, I'm enjoying these 2 clients, and it's giving me an opportunity to stay involved with the college,
right,
and participate in the activities out here. It also gives me cafeteria privileges.
I want to come back to that later. How did you get into the Mississippi Synod?
Of course, I'd been in student politics out here. I was not involved in student politics at Ole Miss, but I don't know. It's just something that I had been interested in, and the Senate appealed to me. I think probably the thing that instilled the word Senate in my mind was the fact that we had Jim Eastland and John Stennis in our United States Senate, and to me they were just icons of the ultimate in politics, and so I think that's why I chose the Senate.
Was it the Senate before the Supreme Court?
Yes, and I've worked for the Supreme Court more recently. I was first elected to the Senate in 1968, the summer of '67, and stayed there until January of '88. I spent 20 years, 5 terms. Experienced having to run for election 5 different times. And, you know, I used to tell folks that the reason I had so many people to run against me was not because there was dissatisfaction with the job I was doing, but I lent so much prestige to the office that others wanted it.
That must have been great.
It was a wonderful experience. So our son was born in 1969, and he's 32 now, but he has physically sat on the front of the desk of 5 different governors. Just as a little child coming on up, you know, and it's just, he knows more about the state capitol and the nooks and crannies than I'll ever know, because he's been down in the basement, and he's been up in the attic and the whole deal, you know. But it's been a grand experience. So, of course, all that time, his mother was on faculty out here, and he was in school, and during the sessions they would come up when the occasion allowed, and that child has grown up going to the Jackson Zoo or going out to the LaFleur Park and taking the nature trail with me on Sunday morning and down to the Pearl River. He learned to swim in the swimming pool at the Ramada Coliseum Motel while we were up there on state business in the summers. And Jackson's a part of our life, just like Poplarville is.
What is he doing now?
He's working in an auto parts place here in Poplarville. Has his home, his family here, wife, and we have 2 grandsons now, a 4-year-old and a 3.5 and a 2-year-old. But it's just wonderful having them right here, and our being able to participate in those children growing, and
Right.
and their grandmother takes all kind of things like strawberries or whatever out every time we go out, and she's baiting those kids. I now understand why when we get out there they run hollering, "Grandma," and they don't say a word about grandpa, you know.
Was there any one thing that really interested you in the government
Oh,
to get involved?
I don't think I don't know. There may have been, but I don't know of anything in particular. I'll say this. I started practicing law in 1958, and of course I was elected in '67. And in my early practice, I had occasions to go to court in Wiggins, in Stone County. And at that time, Boyce Holloman from the coast, and he was also from Stone County as well, but Boyce was district attorney. And I can remember pulling up to the courthouse in Stone County for court, and they were having a criminal term at the time. And Boyce Holloman was out on the front steps, the district attorney, and he had an audience around him of men, jurors, that he was visiting with, and he was telling tales, which he still does. And I said, that is the absolute epitome of a politician, to have people lingering on your word like that. And I think that impressed me. That's not necessarily the thing that motivated, but I think that by me remembering it all these years, I think I was impressed with perhaps that's my idea of what a politician is like. Something that people look up to, not that they necessarily looked up to me all those 20 years, but at least that was my perception.
Right. How has Mississippi government changed from then to now?
The legislature has more factions in it than we did, particularly when I first started. There was a great deal of camaraderie there in the Senate, for sure. We all, even though we may differ, we still could continue to be friends. We didn't carry any animosity over based on the debates we had on the floor. It seemed like our interest overall, even though we represented the interest of our particular districts, our overview was of the entire state's needs and the things that were best for the state. I sense somehow that there's more of the members looking toward their immediate districts and to certain interest groups that they may be affiliated with than there was at that time. We had no women in the legislature at that time, and we had no blacks at that time. I remember Robert Clark, who is Speaker Pro Tem of the House, now has been there 30-something years, was first elected, I believe it was the same year that I was elected in 67 and started serving in 68. And that was the first black legislator who served since Reconstruction. We had, I'm trying to remember who the first lady senator was, but I don't remember whether it was Birdie White or Jean Muirhead, but at any rate, that came about, and we survived. But now it's very commonplace, and it's good.
Talk about the civil rights movement from government standpoint of view.
Oh, I'm not real sure that from 68 on, that was a real big issue. The Sovereignty Commission, I think either that first or second year I was there, was in existence, but shortly thereafter, I guess it was in Bill Wallace's term, the second governor that I served under, that he vetoed the appropriation for the Sovereignty Commission, and it just withered on the vine. That the Citizens Council was in effect at that time, and for a time after that, but then that somehow sort of went away. I don't believe the civil rights issues were as volatile as they were back during the time of Ross Barnett and when James Meredith was admitted to Ole Miss and things of that nature.
Is there one thing that stands out?
Let me back up one step further. There was the matter of the integration of our public schools. That had come about at the time that Hurricane Camille struck here on the coast in '69, and we were in special session during that period of time on John Bell Williams' highway program. He had a highway program that was going to cost $300 million. Now this was in '69, which was a lot of money then, and it would have required a 1-cent gasoline sales tax increase. And I think that's the worst vote that I ever cast in my career in the Senate, was against that 1-cent gasoline tax. Gasoline was selling for either 27 or 28 cents a gallon, and it would have gone to 28 or 29 cents. And, that was just a terrible burden, we thought, to place on the people. And we could have had the beginnings of a tremendous highway system with those days' dollars back then, which at a later date we ultimately did pass the program, but I made a mistake on that vote. But at any rate, it was while we were in that special session that Camille came along, and there was special legislation offered that had to be put on the special call by the governor, but which he did, to do various things to financially assist the Gulf Coast. And at the same time, there were those in the legislature, particularly those from the Delta, where there were a lot of private schools, public school ages. We didn't have kindergarten, so it was 1 through 12. And they offered legislation excuse me, to grant a income tax credit for tuition paid to private schools. And we defeated that. And my concern, and Garvin Johnson at that time, the same year I was elected to the Senate and started in '68, Garvin Johnston, who had been president here, was elected state superintendent of education. And so he began his tenure there. And of course, he was very concerned that diverting those funds from the general fund over to private schools would dissipate the funds available for our public school system and very seriously damage it. And I was impressed with that argument also and voted against it. And I remember one of the senators from the Delta came to me with tears in his eyes and so disappointed in me that I wouldn't help his constituents with their school, what they considered their school problems in the Delta area, while he was voting to help my constituents with monies to recover from Camille. And so we did have still some of the, I guess that's in the civil rights class.
Yeah.
Incidentally, talking about Garvin Johnston, Garvin was a real go-getter, and we had legislation, well, through the years affecting education in the public schools, but there was always something going on in the legislature or legislative-wise that affected the public schools that he was interested in. And bless his heart, he would call me at 5:30 in the morning. And my middle name is Travis, and people who knew me back when I was young called me Martin Travis. So when I'd answer the phone, hello, he said, Martin Travis, what's happening on Senate Bill so-and-so? And so he didn't realize I didn't get up that time in the morning, but I mean, that was a regular event. And of course, I appreciated his interest, but I'm not going to admit that maybe I was rambling at night some in my younger days, and that's why I was sleeping late. But at any rate, I didn't get up those hours of the morning.
I think I got one more question. What's the biggest change you see at Pearl River Community College from back then to now?
Of course, the size is for one thing, the big growth of it, the diversification of the courses that are being taught now, and what was being offered back then. As best I remember, you had carpentry and brick masonry and auto mechanics, and now you have so many technical courses that are out there meeting the needs of the workforce. Of course, electronics, computerization, you have all of that, and you still have a good core basic training curriculum for your academic programs, right, and to go on into senior colleges. Our students get a good background to leave here then and pursue a degree, a further degree. But that's the biggest thing you see is the function of this college meeting the needs of its constituents, and furthering their well-being and their livelihood and their lives.
Why is it that the Mississippi Junior Colleges do so well compared to, say, Louisiana? We only have a few junior colleges, and this is more of a college life where you live on campus. Most of the junior colleges over there are just commuter schools, basically.
Yeah.
Why is that, you think? Why do we have more junior colleges here?
I don't know. I guess maybe it's just tradition, the way they've come up. The community college system is so economically available to the citizens of this state that makes it extremely attractive, just in itself. Then our low ratio of students to faculty gives you such a personal relationship here on campus between the faculty and the students. So it just has so many things going for it, and the students can experience campus life that, like you say, where it's a community college, they're not experiencing that. And I think the experience of campus life in the first 2 years probably helps them succeed, particularly in the campus life atmosphere when they go on to senior college.
One more. Is there any significant event in history that happened during your lifetime that maybe changed your life or affected your life, directly, indirectly?
I don't know. Every day's been a good day. I'm serious. I have had a wonderful life. I've had a tremendous number of experiences that I have enjoyed. Each one of them I've enjoyed. I've been allowed to participate in a lot of activities and be involved. And I don't know, every day is a new day and a new challenge and a new opportunity. And I just, it's been a good trip. Is the only way I can put it, you know. And I hope I'm not through with that trip yet. I haven't mentioned something that I need to. Dolores, she was Dolores Thomas, and I married in 59, but she started on faculty out here, I believe it was in either September of 56 or 57. I let her teach 2 years to be sure she could hold a job before I married her, which she did. But she is now completing her 42nd year out here. She was off campus at the high school a year way early on, and off a year, but then she's been on staff out here for 42 years, and she is May the 11th, coming up, will be her last year. She is now finally retiring, and I am really, really looking forward to those years that we'll live out with her and I both being retired, and that'll be a new dimension in living also. I think we'll start a new and different journey with both of us being in the retirement mode as well. I'm sure that she'll stay involved, just like I've stayed involved, but I think that, but there again, Pearl River has been a big part of our lives. From having gone to school here through high school and college, from my mother being manager of the bookstore and student center for those many years and our involvement there, from Dolores being on campus for, she's been on staff for a part of 6 decades out here.
Wow.
And then my involvement as attorney for the college all these years. It's just, Pearl River is a very big part of that which has happened in our lives over these many years, and it's been a wonderful experience.
That is great. That's all I have.
Well, very good.
Thank you, Ms. Moore.
All right.